The major scale and its modes are often all we need to create a great sounding, naturally flowing solo. Along with their related pentatonic scales, the major and minor scales are considered the safest, tried and true options over most progressions. But although the same old meat and potatoes tastes good on its own, sometimes you fancy something a bit richer or spicier. Lydian dominant is one of these more flavoursome scale options due to a key ingredient, the augmented fourth interval, also known as the tritone, which was once colourfully referred to as the devil's interval. This sharpened fourth, combined with the minor seventh, gives Lydian dominant a mysterious, pleasantly dissonant and intriguingly haunting quality that you'll commonly hear used in film and TV scores, the most famous of which being the Simpsons theme tune. But long before its use in popular culture, Lydian dominant played a sporadic role in classical music and later became a staple scale in jazz harmony, as an alternative to the more natural Mixolydian scale, which uses a perfect fourth interval. This just goes to show, one mere semitone difference in a scale can make a huge difference in sound. Many musicians favour Lydian dominant simply because it offers richer harmony than its Mixolydian cousin. Lydian dominant is the fourth mode of melodic minor, so if you already know the melodic minor scale, simply start playing from its fourth degree to get the Lydian dominant mode. That basically means if we wanted to play D Lydian dominant, for example, we could play A melodic minor. As we'll discover, perhaps the most useful practical property of Lydian dominant is that it can be used over nearly every instance of a dominant seventh chord. Let's now look at some practical ways in which we can use Lydian dominant in our music. As mentioned earlier, and as the name conveniently implies, Lydian dominant functions as a dominant scale. This means it's most at home over the 5 chord in a progression, also called the dominant chord. Let's say we had a 2-5-1 sequence in C major. That's D minor, G major or G7, and C major. You could simply play the C major scale or C major pentatonic over the entire sequence, since these 3 chords contain notes from the C major scale. But instead, we can try using G Lydian dominant over that G7 5 chord before that C major resolution. Lydian dominant is a surprisingly flexible scale. It'll work over most instances of a dominant 7th chord and many instances of a major triad. For example, taking it to extremes, we could, if we wanted, play Lydian dominant over the 1, 4 and 5 chords of a major key blues progression, like in this example in A major. In short, Lydian dominant can be seen as the most reliable scale choice over any dominant 7th chord, which makes it useful for when a progression changes to a dominant 7th chord and you're unsure which scale to use. For example, take this B major key progression, which involves what is known as a backdoor or subtonic chord, a major chord, typically a dominant 7th chord, one whole step down from the tonic. Lydian dominant comes into play over that backdoor chord, so while the B major scale would be a natural choice over the first 3 chords, we'd switch to A Lydian dominant over A7. Lydian dominant is generally a reliable scale to fall back on over the more unconventional chord changes that lead to a dominant 7th chord. For example, if the progression moves to a dominant 7th chord that's not part of the implied key signature, i.e. it's not in the 5 position, and you're unsure which scale to use, try Lydian dominant on the same root as that chord. For example, take this chord progression, D major, B minor, E minor and B flat 7. It's a pretty conventional D major key progression up until that rather unexpected B flat 7, which takes us outside the natural D major scale. For the theory geeks, the B flat 7 chord is considered a flat 6th degree dominant substitution in relation to the D major tonic. Quite a mouthful. Anyway, the bottom line is, if you're unsure what scale to play over that rebellious dominant 7th chord, Lydian dominant will work 9 times out of 10. Let's have a listen. All scales have within them the intervals of a related chord. From this lesson, we know that the chord type associated with Lydian dominant is the dominant 7th chord. However, if we extended this related chord using the intervals of the scale, we'd get an augmented 11th dominant 7th chord. In chord harmony, the augmented 11th is, for all intents and purposes, the same as the augmented 4th of the scale. The reason we use the number 11 is that it's most commonly stacked above the 7th, making it the highest voice tone in the chord. This chord is most closely associated with jazz, but blues, funk and rock musicians may also be familiar with it. By training your ear to hear this sharp 11th stacked above a dominant 7th chord, you'll know exactly when Lydian dominant is the natural scale choice. You can find ear training exercises to help with this and other supplemental content on the lesson page. We can also extend the chord further to include the major 2nd interval of the scale, which in chord harmony is called the 9th. This gives us a dominant 9th augmented 11th chord, which is easiest to finger using this A string shape. Remember, the more extensions are used in the chord, the more it narrows down our scale options. So if the chord contains a minor 7th, 9th and augmented 11th, everything points to Lydian dominant. However, even if the chord only contains the triad, the root, 3rd and 5th, you can still use Lydian dominant and create the extended harmony through your lead playing. Spend time exploring this connection between chords and scales, and there'll be a dramatic change in how you see the fretboard and how you select notes for your solo. So, in summary, Lydian dominant will work over most instances of a dominant 7th chord and many instances of a major triad. When the chord is extended, listen out for that augmented 4th interval. This will tell you that Lydian dominant is the natural scale choice. Visit the lesson page linked to in the description for supplemental content on this lesson and have fun experimenting with this wonderful scale. Cheers.